Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, was probably the best president this country ever had. And yet in his day, he was called an infidel among the religious. Abraham Lincoln had no creed. He didn't belong to any denomination. And furthermore, he didn't believe in the concept of hell. He believed in what they called universal salvation. He believed that Jesus Christ came to save all, and that in fact he would save all. And that got him in trouble with the religious crowd. Now, Abraham Lincoln, his religious history can be found in this book, The Almost Chosen People, by William Wolfe. It's a nice book. I encourage you to read it. Abraham Lincoln believed in Jesus' commandment to love your enemies, to pray for those who persecute you, to do good to those who spitefully use you. He not only believed it, he lived it. During the time in which this country was torn apart, that faith in loving your enemies was a balm in which this country began to heal from the horrible Civil War. A civil war that was fought because different sects of Christianity had different ideas about what's in the book. Imagine in the United States during Abraham Lincoln's time, you had Baptists killing Baptists. You had Methodists killing Methodists, Catholics killing Catholics, North versus South. And who was it that fomented this insanity called the Civil War? It was ministers who interpreted the book. Of course, both sides interpreted the good book correctly. They were proponents of a God who tormented most of mankind for all eternity. They had a God in which the world was divided. They had a God in which, the Calvinists, just a few, the elect, were saved, and the rest were eternally damned. The Arminians, the Methodists, they had a God who tried to save all, but ultimately failed to save all. Let me give you a quote out of the book, The Almost Chosen People by William Wolfe. This summarizes, encapsulates basically what Abraham Lincoln's belief was before he became president and during his presidency. This is a testimony of a Jonathan Hartnett. Jonathan Hartnett was a Lincoln associate and a businessman from Pleasant Plains, Illinois. Hartnett retold of his 1858 conversation with Lincoln and some of his associates. Lincoln closed with the restitution of all things to God, as the doctrine taught in the Scriptures. And if anyone was left in doubt in regard to his belief in the atonement of Christ and the final salvation of all men, he removed those doubts in a few questions he answered and propounded to others. After expressing himself, some one or two took exception to his position, and he asked a few questions that cornered the interrogators and left no room to doubt or question his soundness on the atonement of Christ and the salvation finally of all men. He did not pretend to know just when that event would be consummated, but that it would be the ultimate result, that Christ must reign supreme, high over all, the Savior of all, and the supreme ruler. He could not be with one out of the fold. All must come in with his understanding of the doctrine taught in the Scriptures. Now, in the little book, there was another quote that I thought was kind of clever. Abraham Lincoln overheard a couple of people discussing salvation, who was going to be saved and whatnot. And Abraham Lincoln interrupted them and said, "It's either all or none." I find it really tragic and sort of insane that Abraham Lincoln, who believed that God loved everyone, would be called an infidel by the religious who would turn on each other. Not only denomination against denomination, like Catholics versus Protestants, but within their own denomination. Baptist would kill Baptist, Methodist would kill Methodist, Presbyterian would kill Presbyterian, Episcopalian would kill Presbyterian. And yet they claim to serve Christ. What insanity. Imagine, I live in Missouri, right on the border between the North and the South. And there were situations in this state in which a mother may have had 5, 6, 7 children. And some of the young men went to the South, and some of the young men went to the North. Raised in the same church, raised by the good book, and end up killing each other because ministers of the North and ministers of the South divided and actually turned and trained their young men to, for the sake of honor of God and country, kill each other. Abraham infidel, the rest who believed in eternal damnation, the Orthodox. That's insane. Now I have a septic tank on the other side of the lake, a huge septic tank. And I think the teaching of eternal damnation for most of mankind, or annihilation, or what they call conditional immortality, that God would just annihilate those who didn't accept Him and rejected Him or didn't do the right thing, that they would be eternally just annihilated. I think both those doctrines, eternal torment and eternal death, belong in that septic tank. I think it's time that more and more people become like Abraham Lincoln and believe in Jesus' command to love even your enemies. Abraham Lincoln did. He joined no denomination. He had no creed except love your enemies. Become like Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, and believe that Jesus Christ is wise enough, loving enough, and powerful enough to draw all mankind to Himself. I call it the victorious gospel of Jesus Christ. And I know if Abraham Lincoln was here and he heard what I called it, he'd give it a thumbs up.